Welcome to the Bladtcast. Very excited to be back talking movies, going to the movie theater, seeing a movie, doing a podcast about it. It feels like old times. As always, I'm Christian Bladt. And if we are going to speak about the movie we're going to speak about, which is No Time to Die, which I think is it the 25th James Bond? Is it James Bond 25?
25th official movie.
25th official movie, 26th if you count what? No Time to Die or the fake Casino Royale?
Well, I was going to say it'd be 27 if you counted fake Casino Royale and Never Say Never Again.
Well, that's what I meant. Yeah. I said No Time to Die. I meant Never Say Never Again. Yeah. Those are the unofficial. Exactly. And of course, if we're talking Bond, we're talking to our pal Hunt, Mark Hunt. And we appreciate you coming on to talk about it. That looks like it is a dry martini shaken, not stirred.
The official Vesper Martini from Casino Royale.
And you have a shirt that matches. I am not dressed for it, but mostly because I know that the way that I position my camera, you usually can't see below my shoulders anyway. So I have a Back to the Future shirt on just because it didn't really matter. But a little behind the scenes secret. Of course, our pal Dominicus Saxon in the chat pointing out that this is No Time to Bladt. And we'll talk about all of it, but he jumps right in with, I'm so glad the new 007 isn't Jane Bond. She has her own personality. Now, this is how you reboot a character. I'm looking at you, Ghostbusters. I will tell you, we will talk about Bond in a second. I am equally as unexcited for the new Ghostbusters movie as I was for the previous one. I just feel like when they didn't make a Ghostbusters 3 in like 1993, I don't think I needed any more Ghostbusters. You know, when it wasn't going to be those four guys as the Ghostbusters, it's hard to get excited. I know people are probably looking forward to Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I would be happy to go see it, especially at a free screening. Press screening, just calling attention to that, putting it out in the universe. Though that is a Sony movie. I've got friends at Sony, thanks to being able to see Venom 2. But in any case, let's just go big picture, Mark. Your overall thoughts on No Time to Die, Bond 25/27.
Wow. Well, I've seen it twice. 85% loved it, and 15% still trying to take it in. So it has an asterisk. It has an asterisk. But so far, I mean, I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I did enjoy it. You know, we'll obviously take the time to really go down into it. But the way that I was thinking about it, to look at the Daniel Craig era of Bond films, this for me goes third because I think it's a toss-up for me because Casino Royale was so great because it was the first new one.
Mm-hmm.
But Skyfall might be one of my overall favorite just Bond movies in general. I just thought it was so tremendously well done. But also, Quantum of Solace is one of the biggest steaming piles of shit I've ever seen in my life. And, you know, I'm a little blinded by Many Saints of Newark and Halloween Kills as some of the worst movies I've ever seen because I've seen them in the last few weeks. But man, Quantum of Solace, I remember it went into production during a writer's strike. I think that they couldn't legally do rewrites. And boy, did it show. And Spectre wasn't great either. You know, that was more of a disappointment on the heels of Skyfall. But
I think Spectre's a little. No Time to Die makes Spectre a little better. If Quantum is a epilogue to Casino Royale, then Spectre is kind of a prologue to No Time to Die. And I was surprised how much. I kind of think Spectre, and it wasn't my favorite, it's kind of gone up a little bit because of this movie.
Yeah, it's funny because after I saw Spectre, I don't think my expectation was to rush and see it again. But after seeing this, I am more interested in kind of revisiting it because it was a few years ago now, and I think I would probably have a new appreciation for it.
And there's a
I
lot
remember,
that carries over. There's a lot of little tiny
yeah,
story threads that carry over.
yeah, and look, Christoph Waltz is tremendous anytime I see him. So I think that to actually get that, and I remember when we did our Bladtcast episode reviewing it, we spent a lot of time on the fact that the big reveal was that he was Blofeld. It was almost like, what do you mean Benedict Cumberbatch is Khan in Into Darkness? It's like, yeah, well, who else is he going to be? you know.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think that it's I think that look, and Daniel Craig, so we got 5 movies out of him, and 3 of them were good. And I think that's look, that'll get you into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So if you're always going 3 out of 5. So let's just sort of talk about, just we'll spend time on what didn't work, but you talked about liking 85%, 85% happy with this. Let's talk about some of the biggest stuff that you were happy with.
Oh, I mean, pretty much literally the first 85% of the movie. The movie starts off. Let's see. The opening is the first we get a gun barrel, which is a gun barrel opening, which is rare for Daniel Craig. I think the Spectre was the first one that had a gun barrel opening at the beginning of the movie proper. Then we have a flashback to Madeline as a little girl, and again back to Spectre. There's a scene where Bond is talking to Madeline, getting her passed, and she talks about one of the first things traumas in her life was when this man came to visit their house, and he was there to kill them, and she had to go under the sink where they kept the bleach, get the gun, and shoot him. So as this is progressing, I'm like, is this the story she told Inspector? And then her mom spills the wine. She opens the sink. There's the bleach. There's the gun. And I was impressed with the connection there. And for half a second, I was thinking, oh my God, the bleach, is that what's going to mess up Safin's face? Which wasn't the case. But they kind of took that little story she told Inspector and expanded on it, and then we cut right into a very long pre-title sequence, which I enjoyed a lot. And after that, it was just a roller coaster ride until the end.
Yeah, I think we get a couple of false starts, but in a way that it's all integral to the story.
Mhm.
And let me bring in our other friend, our pal Sam Whitfield, who's also here to talk Bond. Sam, thanks for joining us to talk.
Sam.
And we wanted to just sort of get your overall thoughts to start with, Sam. Mark was saying basically that he was 85% happy with the movie, and that sort of goes through the first 85% of the movie. There's a certain point where it levels off for him. Just what were your overall thoughts, Sam?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on, and I hope you guys can hear me okay.
You sound great.
So I have to agree with Mark, and this is something that we talked about. I had Mark on my podcast to talk Bond last week, but yeah, I would have to agree that I would say 75%, 85% of the film was good. In the words of our friend Will Sterling, it was fine. Maybe a little more than just fine.
Yeah, that official classification is fine plus, is what we in the vernacular of the Bladtcast. It's basically French for fine plus. It's a little bit better than fine.
I really liked kind of the homages that they made, like to the Aston Martin. I'm glad that they brought those back. Glad that they brought some of the tropes of more of the gadgets and whatnot. I feel like they had a really good structure, but then in terms of things just kind of like Safin as a villain, they I really feel like his motive was unclear kind of throughout the movie, and just kind of little subtle things that I feel kind of undermine the movie. They would, especially kind of when they brought in Felix later on, and they were talking about all the adventures that they had, and we were like, wait, we didn't get to see any of what Felix is talking out. So just kind of those things kind of hindered the movie for me a bit, I would say, overall.
Yeah, I think that we're in agreement that we overall liked it, and there are some problems with it. Let's all take a moment and we'll talk about Safin Rami Malek as the villain, and I think that there's sort of like an interesting foundation for his story that's laid. I don't know how well executed it is. There's a lot of inconsistencies, which to me, I don't know, Mark, you can tell me, you usually know more about this stuff. There are a few things in this movie that kind of scream of reshoots that were done. They would have obviously been done a long time before the pandemic. And, the movie sat around for a full extra year and a half. And, just sometimes things, they didn't seem consistent from scene to scene. And it's not like little continuity things like, oh, he had a hat on here and he didn't have it on. It's nothing like that. It just sort of, and maybe it's just a spotty storytelling, but was there anything significant that was reshot or rewritten to the best of your knowledge? And what do you feel about Safin as a villain?
Well, to my knowledge, the producers, and I don't know any different, they said pre-pandemic, like as they were coming up to the April, I mean, this movie's had 6 release dates.
Yeah, the original one was April 2020, or was there?
It was originally November 2019.
Oh, okay, right.
Then Danny Boyle dropped out, and they got the current director, Cary Fukunaga. They pushed it back to Valentine's Day 2020. And if they'd stuck to that date, the movie would, of course, already have come out.
It would have come out and it would have made $8 billion.
Yep. And then, but then they're like, let's push it back a little more. And then April 2020 was the kiss of death. And then it got back. Then, then it was fall of 2020, spring of 2021, and then finally now. But Safin was, as far as I know, the producer said the movie was done, shot. The only reshoots they said they did was because this was filmed like almost 2 years. It was 2 years ago. This was filmed. The product tie-ins with Omega watches, and Bond's supposed to be sporting the latest stuff. Well, these were 2 years out of date, so they went back and digitally inserted an updated Omega face, refreshed some of the merchandising. But from what they say, the story wasn't touched, and really there was nobody available during COVID anyway for reshoots anyway. But that's what I've heard. That's the official line, that there were no reshoots. I don't know about dubbing. But
yeah, that's true, because I mean, there's obviously you can do ADR, additional dialogue recording. Right. You can do that from your iPhone and it'll sound fine. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Let me just before we start talking about Safin, I just want to bring in again Dominicus Saxon. The bad guy was pretty watered down, but love that he had a villain lair. You know what? As villain lairs go, Private Island with a lot of the bells and whistles, that was a pretty sweet lair.
Could have been sweeter, though. I have some complaints with that.
Well, hey, let's dive right into it. If you have complaints about the lair, let's get to them, and we'll talk about the villain after the lair. Let's be honest, we're all here for the lair anyway.
Well, the lair was pretty much taken from the Ian Fleming novel "You Only Live Twice," except it was Blofeld that was sequestered on an island, and he had this thing, the Garden of Death, where he had his little castle, if you will. And it's completely surrounded by this garden of poison plants and things that you would kill, and that would kill you. And so when I heard that, it sounded like leading up to this movie, it's like, oh my gosh, they're filming this. I mean, it's going to be Rami Malek's character. Maybe Blofeld will be there. I was really hoping for a lot more Blofeld than we got. And then all of a sudden, when they get there, his little poison garden was like this little teeny weeny little meditation garden with mostly rakes. It was very underwhelming. But again, that was my preconception with the having read the book, because a Bond in the novel, he arrives on the shores of the island by himself because Blofeld has killed his wife, and he's out to just flat out assassinate Blofeld. So he is picking his way through this massive garden of death, avoiding plants and everything, and to make his way to kill Blofeld. And that's what I wanted to see. And it was just, I don't know. again, my preconceptions, having read the books, I was hoping for something a little grander than the little teeny weeny little meditation garden he had. But I mean, other than that, I mean, it was fine. It was fine. It was a serviceable. It was a
Jason
serviceable
Blair asks the all-important
Blair.
question: were there sharks with freaking laser beams? And unfortunately,
No sharks,
Jason, there were not. And I think
Could've used
we
them.
touched on it. Sorry, I think we touched on it in the intro. I just want to make sure everybody knows that this is a spoiler-filled reaction to No Time to Die. So we haven't really gone too deep in what happens, but there are going to be some massive spoilers that we have to talk about. So I want to make sure that we make that clear. And I'm sorry, Mark, what were you saying?
Oh, that was pretty much it. Other than that, I like the base. There was nice little Easter eggs. There's a ceiling partition that has a round overhang that lets light in, that had these beams across it that were pretty much a recreation of Dr. No's lair. Of course, a lot of people were speculating that Rami Malek's character was actually Dr. No for a while in the Bond community. I don't know if that was general knowledge. A lot of people thought, oh, this is going to be Dr. No. And which would, after the whole Blofeld thing in the previous movie, is like, oh, you're really going to dip into that well. And thankfully it wasn't. But he had a lot of the tropes of Dr. No from the books, the obsession with the poison plants, or the obsession with the Dr. No from the movie. Kind of had his own little island and kind of had his own little. So he was kind of a little Dr. No-ish. But overall, the lair was fine. It was cool.
Well, Sam, what did you think of the lair and Safin, the villain himself?
The lair, I kind of have to agree with Mark. It reminded me a lot of the like Mark said, the volcano lair from You Only Live Twice, kind of mixed in with the Apple headquarters in Cupertino. Interestingly enough, they kind of gave me some vibes of that.
Yeah, and by the way, at the Apple headquarters, they do have sharks with laser beams, so that was the one thing missing from that as well. Yeah.
Oh yes, and depending on who you talk to, Tim Cook is more of a Bond villain than Bond villains too. But anyway, no, I thought the lair was. I mean, I thought it was good that they at least brought it back. Whether or not it was, perfect, I think is up to the individual viewer. I certainly kind of enjoyed it though. As far as Savin himself goes, and this is something that Mark and I had talked about previously, like I said earlier, his motives were kind of all over the place. And I guess now would be a good time to kind of mention spoilers, but his motive kind of towards the beginning of the film is actually to wipe out Spectre, which I found to be very interesting. And then, he goes ahead and does it. And then he changes his plot, like in the final third act of the movie, to be complete world domination, and to just
for no explained reason.
Yeah, for no explained reason. And I kept thinking, I'm like, did we miss something? And then I remember I went back a second time and it was like, no, they never explained it. So,
and he even got to kill Blofeld too.
Yeah.
Destroy Spectre, kill Blofeld, mission accomplished, done and dusted. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, oh, by the way, I want to kill the rest of the world.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to do away with this ultra secret organization hell-bent on world domination so that I can dominate the world. And I thought that his interaction with Madeline, I thought, was wildly inconsistent as well. And then when it comes to the fact of using her as leverage against Bond, I think, that certainly adds up. But having the ultimate leverage in terms of the daughter, and the way that the moment, one of the biggest moments where I was just sort of like, huh? We just, like, the daughter bites his finger. What's a girl's name? The little girl's name?
Yeah, Mathilde.
Yeah. And so he just lets her go, and she runs back, and of course immediately finds a Bond and Madeline. And I was just like, well, this is I don't know, what is this, like some kind of new kinder, gentler, woke supervillain who is it's above him to slap a child on the hand and just pick her up and still continue to use her as leverage. That just really didn't add up for me in that moment. I'm like, this is the ultimate piece of the puzzle that you need. It's the one you have. You're just going to let her run off because, it's like, I'm not going to protect you anymore. It's like, well, you weren't really protecting her. Maybe go ahead.
They had just, I don't know if they were going, I don't know if it's me reading into it. I don't know if and I think, again, if they just adjusted the scene, rewrote it a little more, gave us more of Safin, because he did the same. He let her mother go. He could have killed Madeline when she was a child, let her drown. He could have shot her under the ice. He chose to pick her up and let her go. If they had just, if that was the motivation for letting the daughter go, if they could have established something like that, but again, they didn't. I don't know. So that's, in my mind, I'm like, is that what he's doing? Is he doing it because he gave the mother a chance to walk away? I don't know. One of many problems I had with a less than stellar Bond villain.
Yeah, and just because we're on it, the lineage of Matilda, and the fact that Madeline insists right away that she's not yours, this goes back to what we were saying before. Like Spectre, Christoph Waltz is not Blofeld.
Now,
Cumberbatch is not Khan. Yeah, go ahead.
Here's my thing about that, because I've had other people say, well, why does she deny it? When I first saw the movie, he says he kind of like, he's looking at her like, am I the father? And I think she chooses her words very carefully. She doesn't say you're not the father. She just says she's not yours.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Almost as if, parenting aside, whether you're biologic, and this is probably me reading into it. I thought it was rather clever. I thought it was maybe her saying, whether your DNA is what fathered her, it doesn't matter. You left me, we left. Yeah. She's not yours.
She's not yours
in your life. So it was almost like
you don't need to film any kind of emotional attachment to this child. Yeah, she's not yours.
It was almost semantics that was fair. Very carefully that I thought that she used those words. Not that you are not the biological father, but she's not yours. So don't even, forget about any connection. You're not in her life.
That's interesting. Let me bring in another comment from Dominica Saxon. That's a great point. They should have done a flashback to him saving the mom under the ice, sort of to remind us of the moment. I mean, that certainly could have helped. What did you think about all of this, Sam, in terms of, getting to introducing this character of Matilda, of the daughter, and trying to basically tell us, maybe like put doubt in the audience's mind that this little girl who is basically a mini me of Daniel Craig is possibly not his daughter.
Hearing what Mark just said, I actually think that that's a pretty good explanation, but when she first said she's not yours, like I kind of chuckled a little bit. I'm like, of course she's his daughter. For them to try and play the audience out like, oh, she's not yours, and then to reveal like at the end that she in fact is, it's like, yeah, we all knew that. And I think maybe now, considering what Mark said, I think that makes a little more sense. I did enjoy like Bond making crepes and just doing like, I guess, dad Bond things, and then showing us a little bit of that. I thought they played that off real well, and then also the fact that they gave Bond a daughter and an effective family to kind of fight for instead of just queen and country. I thought that was interesting, but I was kind of like, they could have just played off like, yeah, she's yours, but I'm still upset that you left, so you don't get to interact. I feel like they could have done that like they did in the Indiana Jones movies, and that would have been just as interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it is an interesting wrinkle to sort of weave into the character to give him a family, which obviously we haven't had before. And the reality being, of course, that whomever the villain du jour would be going up against Bond would be able to leverage that against him. So I think that the characters in and of themselves, they worked within the story. I think that there are times where Safin worked well, but I agree with you, Mark, in that the disfigured face being something that, I mean, they explain it away, I believe, in terms of the sort of the chemical agent that took out the rest of his family.
Right.
But it sort of disappointing, really. The idea that that's, that could have been what the bleach was. And maybe that's, maybe it's there as a red herring, to think that like, oh, you're going to get to see this, but instead he's going to save her when she falls through the ice,
Well, I think it was more that she had mentioned it in Spectre. So
Right.
they're like, oh, we got to have the bleach. Because I'm sure went back in Spectre when they threw that little tiny story she tells, I'm sure they had no clue that they were going to do this as a movie. But this was just them kind of not retconning, but going back and saying, hey, she mentioned a gun in bleach. So let's kind of weave that into the story.
What were you going to say, Sam?
I guess my biggest complaint with Safin overall was I feel like he had potential to be like a really good Bond villain. I feel like he just didn't get enough screen time. I feel like maybe if he had gotten a little more screen time, then maybe, like fleshed out some of his motives, I feel like they could have made him a really compelling villain. I mean, Rami Malek is a really good actor in everything I've seen him in. And he can definitely act, so it's not that. It's just I feel like they underused the Bond villain a lot, and then when they did use him, it was kind of like he was all over the place a bit. So
yeah, I mean, and for me, the biggest disappointment was obviously that we didn't get to see him sing "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen. I mean, if you're going to have Freddie Mercury in a Bond movie, like at least have him sing one song. He didn't even go anywhere near Wembley to perform. So that was clearly a missed opportunity. But yeah, I think it's, I mean, in the modern era, you can point to a few of the Bond villains where they don't quite hit the mark. I mean, a perfect example would be the fact that you have this great casting of Christoph Waltz, and I'm talking about in Spectre, and you just sort of felt like, it could have been more. So when he was in this again, I was kind of excited. I'm like, all right, we're going to see how this works. And legitimate surprise for like, not once the scene was set up, but the fact that, once Spectre gets taken out and then you feel like, oh, okay, so maybe we're not going. I thought Blofeld was going to kind of be behind everything.
He should have been.
Was going to be. Yeah, I think that to go out as Craig's last movie, I thought that they were building towards something. And maybe they honestly thought it was more important to have the misdirect and have him. I mean, it's within the first hour he's gone from the movie, right?
Yeah, I mean, that considering Spectre kind of did a soft recon of the whole series, saying, "Hey, Blofeld is the one that's been behind everything since day one." So I'm like, okay, that's legit. Okay, if that's what you want to go with, Spectre, he gets at the end of Spectre, he gets purposefully captured, locked up. And in this 6 years or whatever, 5 years since Spectre, I'm thinking, okay, the next movie, that's where they're saving for him. That's when we're going to get like the Blofeld. He is going to be behind everything. When they do the island, he, maybe Safin's like an underling, but that's who that should have been the big boss, to use a video game term.
Yeah.
That's who should have been at the end. That's who he should have had the confrontation with. And if you're gonna, spoilers, if you're gonna kill Bond, it should be more at his hand than at Safin's. Because again, to go back to the books, for us book nerds, you only live twice. Bond goes to that island. He confronts Blofeld, and credit to the movie, he strangles Blofeld, and his last words to Blofeld is "Die, Blofeld, die," and he kills him right there in his garden. They did it on the movie, and the Bond geek in me was just like, oh my god, this is
they
Bond
found
heaven.
a way
this
to
is
sort of
straight
capture
from the
that.
books.
Yeah.
Then he stops, lets him go, and ironically, that's what kills him. But it was kind of for your big bad guy throughout this entire saga to have him die halfway through and then let, Safin carry it to the end. Again, that kind of disappointed me because theoretically on paper, Christoph Waltz, properly written, would have been the definitive Blofeld. I just think he was underserved throughout this whole series, and he should have been the one at the end.
Can I just kind of say something echoing off that about well, when they cast Christoph Waltz originally as Blofeld, I was like, oh hell yes, he's going to be perfect as Blofeld, because I remember seeing him in Inglourious Basterds as the villain in there, and I'm like, he can play like a really psychopathic, just like really down, evil villain. So he's perfect for Blofeld. And then they really, he really wasn't like scary and menacing at all, which is how I would kind of want Blofeld as for a villain. I mean, he's Bond's Joker and arch nemesis essentially.
Yep.
So they underplayed him in Spectre, and I'm like, well, if they're going to bring him back for the next one, I'm like, they'd better let him just pull out all the stops. Like initially I was kind of thinking if they would do like a whole Dark Knight Prison Break style thing in No Time to Die, and that he would like escape from MI6 headquarters, and then he would be like the ultimate mastermind. But no, they, like Mark said, I mean, he came out like Hannibal Lecter, kind of in that cage, and they gave him like maybe they gave him one scene that was like maybe 5 minutes long at the most.
Now, if we were to find that there, maybe they had bigger intentions for him, and maybe there was an actor availability issue, I don't know that that's the case. That would justify it, but it seems like a missed opportunity. You're sort of talking about this idea of Blofeld having been the big boss, and Safin basically being, the Dwight Schrute, the assistant to the regional manager. He basically would have been sort of more on the ground, handling the base and doing some of the dirty work. And I think that, considering the fact, and again, we're doing all the spoilers, we've already said it, and we've mentioned a couple of times that we're saying the spoilers, the fact that James Bond dies at the end of this movie, unquestionably dies. How fitting would it have been that he and Blofeld die at the same moment, sort of just right there. It's like, you know what, maybe you even got the upper hand a little bit here, Blofeld, but it's all, it's not going to matter because we're not going to be around anymore. I mean, he's really the Moriarty to his Holmes, I mean, when you get these kind of pairings, I think it's poetic in a way if they were to have found a way to do that. But that is not what they decided to do. So what we're faced with addressing is what they did do. And I think that there's plenty of other things to sort of go through. And I think that as a villain, in terms of his story and the portrayal, I think, his backstory, I mean, the setup for Safin, I think that was well done. I think Rami Malek was good casting. I mean, I didn't have any problem with it. Dominicus Saxon is basically saying what I'm thinking. Christoph Waltz and Rami Malek are really solid actors and were sadly underused in this movie. I mean, I agree that you have this opportunity to use them. You could have certainly done more with them, but I think
go back
go ahead.
to Bond history.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie Dr. No, the titular character Dr. No, barely has 5 minutes screen time. If that. He comes at the very end. He's not on screen that much, but he is so well written. Actually, you can see my Dr. No figure right over my shoulder on this side right here.
Yeah, I know it's hard to figure out which direction to point.
There's Dr. No right over my shoulder.
There is.
He's so well written. He is. Most people don't even, when they think back to Dr. No, they're like, really? He was only on it for five minutes? But he's so well used in those 5 minutes. He was kind of the template for future Bond villains. And they've had that opportunity with this movie, but you're not going to get Dr. No every time. So
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's sort of the Boba Fett of Bond villains, and it's just like, wait, how many minutes are they in there? How many lines does he have? And it is interesting that we didn't get it. Let's sort of go through some of the other familiar faces that we see throughout. Sam, you were the one to reference all these adventures with Felix Leiter that we don't see. Did you start to get the feeling that, some of those other adventures might have been better to put into a movie than this adventure?
Yeah, I mean, I just would have liked to have seen like, maybe like a flashback, but yeah. I feel like maybe one of those adventures would have even been good for like Spectre or something. And I was also like wondering maybe if they were referencing like other, Bond movies too that like weren't, that maybe we had seen, and I'm like, but no, this is Craig's timelines, so it's his own thing. But yeah, I feel like there was a large, gap in time, and obviously it's believable that Craig's Bond has had other adventures off screen. I just feel like, maybe they could have handled it a little bit better in like explaining so that I feel like I know like a few of the audience members in one of my theaters were like, was that like in another movie? So I think it kind of confused some people who weren't Bond fans.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, that could have been a nice opportunity to reference some interactions that obviously different actors portraying the roles had in other movies, and
yeah,
giving the impression that, oh, you know what, a version of that did happen in Daniel Craig's timeline.
yeah, I think you have to use your imagination on that.
Sure.
Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of Felix in his movies.
Yeah.
I did like the Felix scenes though, because again, to go back to the novels, which I have up here, Ian Fleming novels. In the novels, whenever Bond and Felix get together, they go straight to a bar and they just start drinking and just burrowing
Yep.
out. And that's the scene where they're together playing their drinking games. That's pure Ian Fleming. And I really love those scenes. And I thought Jeffrey Wright was fantastic. And I've always, after Quantum of Solace, the fact that he wasn't in Skyfall, he was only mentioned in Spectre. I
Yeah.
thought missed opportunity. I would have, and again, spoilers. The fact they killed him in this movie really pissed me off too. But that's neither here nor there. I would have liked Felix to have been more involved in the movie, to be more of a kind of a sidekick throughout this movie, have a little bigger part. Not that Felix ever has a big part in any of the movies, but I like the interaction. But again, yeah, you kind of have to read into it like, okay, if you're just going by John Q. Public's perception of Jeffrey Wright's Felix, not a lot of screen time, not a lot of interaction. Most of it was in 2006 Casino Royale, 2008 Quantum of Solace, and most people probably forgot about that.
Would you feel like it would have been a disservice to the character to have had him do the wrestling turn being the heel turn, instead of the Logan Ash character? If it turned out that Felix was actually
No. Don't even taint the character Felix.
Yeah. Well, I
way.
wonder if that
No.
was a consideration, and they're
That
like,
would have
no, we
pissed me
can't do that.
off.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But
No,
it was a way that I thought that we could have gotten more out of him.
No.
But yeah,
That would have angered me to no end.
And they don't want to do that. Mark, they don't want to do that. Like,
Yeah.
They know what Doctor Who has done in the last few years to you, so they want to make sure that they don't.
Started. Russell T's coming back, so we'll see.
I know. What were you going to say, Sam?
It would have. I mean, I'm kind of on the same level as Mark in terms of, I mean, like I've read all of the books and whatnot too, so that would have angered me as well. As a fan, I do like the fact, credit to Jeffrey Wright, I do like the fact that they've kept this Felix consistent throughout Craig's tenure. That's something that they've never done prior to Jeffrey Wright, as far as my knowledge, goes. I think they had like that one CIA like stand-in for Leiter in two of Brosnan's movies, but
Jack Wade,
yeah,
played by Joe Don Baker.
I do
Mitchell.
Yeah. And I do like the fact that they do have Jeffrey Wright all throughout, Craig's tenure. Like I just, like I said, I feel like we kind of have a common theme here of them using characters, and then, we're supposed to feel like some big connection when his character gets killed off. So
And it was a nice Easter egg for Bond fans. When Bond goes into his place in Goldeneye and finds a little cigar stub, it's a Cuban Delicatado, which is the exact same brand that Pierce Brosnan was researching in of all movies, Die Another Day. He had to go to the Cuban cigar factory and ask for Delicatados, and they kind of threw in that little Die Another Day Easter egg. It was kind of cute.
Was that in the Easter egg?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
When Daniel Craig is at he's kind of in his Jamaica resort. He's in retirement. Yeah, that's actually Ian Fleming's Goldeneye, and where he wrote all the books. But he comes in and he finds a cigar butt on the floor and he picks it up, and it's a Cuban Delicatado, and it kind of lets him know that Felix was there.
I remember the moment, but
it's also the cigar stub. It's also the cigar brand from Die Another Day, which was a nice little Easter egg. I thought was kind of cute.
No, it's always great when you have that sort of stuff. Well, we've gone 40 plus minutes, and we have not, as of yet, talked about Ana de Armas, who is, of course, Paloma. That is our Bond girl, and she didn't have as much. One of them, but she's the one that I'll remember. Really, just from that dress. She's the one who I'll think of first. Let's talk a little bit about her. I mean, obviously there's varying degrees of screen time for this role. What did you think of her? I'll ask you first, Sam.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because Ana de Armas is always one of those people, like, a lot of my friends are like, she's really hot, and I've always kind of been like, she's okay, but I don't really get it. But in this movie, I definitely understand that now. She was a titular Bond girl, really kind of going back to the the classic like 70s Bond girl, like I guess. Kind of unsure of herself, a little ditzy, but not, they didn't mess with the character too much. I like what we got from her, but I feel like they marketed her way more than she actually was in the movie. So,
and was that clever wordplay when you referred to her as titular, Sam? Were you trying to were you trying to throw a fastball by me there on that one? This is the Bladtcast. I wanted to let him finish, but I also another pun right there. And great point from Dominicus Saxon. Ana de Armas looks slightly better than I do in a dress like that.
Yeah. Yes, that was intentional and
appreciated.
Yeah, and who knows? I might finish later. So.
Mark, what did you think of her? I do sort of like the first day on the job vibe we got.
Trying to recover from Sam's last little statement there.
Well, we all remember what show we're on. It's fine.
But I thought the character reminded me a lot of the character Mary Goodnight from Man with a Golden Gun.
Okay.
She was kind of a ditzy little rookie special agent who was assisting Bond, and that's kind of how this one was. I was more impressed how she could do backflips, karate kicks, gunplay, do all that without popping out of that dress. Holy cow! That was a feat right there.
Yeah, they probably, well, I guess you can't crazy glue it, but it was probably, it's like how I think it was for Iron Man 2, Scarlett Johansson would be sewn into her outfit, her Black Widow outfit for, every take that they were, not every take, but every scene that they were shooting. So there's probably something about like, well, we got to make sure it stays on. But you know what? Also, digitally you can make sure that that your titular character is not too titular, I guess, to continue with the theme. Yeah, I think that it is sort of one of those moments, where it's like she says something, towards something along the lines of "let's do it again," and you realize, like, yeah, but they're not going to do it again. We're not going to get to see more adventures, and we'll spend a few more minutes on this film, but then we should give some thoughts about where we're going next with this franchise, because it will, of course, continue. But let's there was a comment that Dominica Saxon had earlier about the new 007 portrayed by Lashana Lynch, unless I'm getting my characters mixed up. And what did we think of her? Is it I mean, I think that she was a good character. I liked sort of the banter between her and Bond. The fact that there was some light comedy where it's like, "Whoa, what number are you if you're not 007?" And I mean, it's probably unrealistic to think that those conversations would happen, but it's for us, so we can enjoy that sort of working the same case, but him working against her. I liked some of that dynamic. What did you think, Mark?
You know what? She was the one character I was like, oh my gosh, really? What are they going to do with her? I was really unsure about.
Mm-hmm.
And I wound up really liking her character. I thought she was great. She wasn't, I mean, she was kind of headstrong at the beginning. She was her own character. She was competitive against Bond, but she quickly realized, like, okay, this guy's got a lot of sense. So she kind of not defers to him, but she really appreciates him later on in the movie and becomes a solid, like when they go to that island, she's got his back, and she seems to, like, not, again, I don't want to say defer to him, but
she also realizes
skills.
the value that he's bringing to the operation that they're in. It's like, it's not in her best interest to keep butting heads with this guy.
And she the moment where she says, she talks to M and she says he needs to be 007 again.
Yeah.
That was kind of like a nice little scene. I thought it was kind of cool, and I was really impressed with her. I really liked that character. At the end of the movie, that was the one character I went in with super low expectations, and she exceeded my expectations.
Was your understanding that she was going to be the new 007, or did you not learn that until you saw the movie?
I had heard rumors that she was 007. Yeah. I had heard in the little Bond fan community, they were like, she's the new 007. But I took it, I was like, from the beginning, I was like, okay, she probably is, because I already knew ahead of time that something's going to happen and he's going to be out of the game for about 5 or 6 years, and Felix is going to bring him back in. Of course, they're going to give away the number again. They're not precious about it. It's not a hockey jersey, but so she's the new 007. I kept telling everyone, I was like, don't worry. He'll be at the end of by the time this movie ends, he will be 007 again. That was never a big deal for me. But how she, if she was going to outplay, but how they treated the character was more of a concern. And I really liked her. At the end of the day, I was like, she was a really good character. She was one of my favorite characters of the movie.
Yeah, I think that they worked well together once they started working together, but the adversarial nature was also kind of fun to have. What did you think, Sam?
I pretty much agree with everything that Mark said. I remember when she was first announced, I was really kind of concerned at her because she kind of came out like right around the time everything with the Me Too movement was happening, and so the way that she was kind of pitched, it was kind of like she was going to be like the woke 007, and I was kind of like oh no, I don't want to get hit over the head with this. But no, they actually, she and Bond had like a pithy interaction with each other, but she actually wound up being one of the best utilized characters in the movie. Like, she had respect for Bond, like Mark said. And I almost feel like if you're going to write like strong female characters, that's the way to do it. Don't write characters that necessarily like talk down to, the males, but just be like, hold their own, but yet show respect and whatnot. So I like
Yeah,
that.
no, I know what the thinking there is that, oh, okay, so there's a new 007, she's a black female, and the idea that that could have been done for all the wrong reasons. I can see that kind of apprehension, but I think the execution of the character means that she was a great choice, and I think that it was fun to watch. Dominica Saxon again all over the chat. They can't be too precious about the 00 agents. I don't recall which movie, maybe a Timothy Dalton, but most of the 00 agents get killed when they all meet up. I'm sure, Mark, you know which one that was.
He might be referring to Living Daylights. At the beginning, 007 and 2 other 00s go on a training exercise on Gibraltar, and 2
Right.
of them get taken out, and Bond has to take out the assassin.
Right.
Yeah.
See.
What he's talking about.
Yeah, I see. I knew that you would know. In terms of, kind of closing the book on the Daniel Craig era, what did we think, consistently over the course of these movies? I think that they were well utilized, really, in all of them. And I thought that it was good to see them in this one. Again, we had Ralph Fiennes as M, Ben Whishaw as Q, and Naomi Harris as Moneypenny. How did you feel they were in this movie? And then we look at them sort of, their involvement with Bond over the course of the 5 films. I'll ask you first, Mark.
Well, I loved them. I loved
Yeah.
Ralph Fiennes as M. I loved Naomi Harris as Moneypenny. I loved Ben Whishaw as Q. I loved Rory Kinnear as Tanner.
Yeah, that's a great point. I should have included him in there.
I love them. And if they do a soft reboot, I would love to see them continue on with a new Bond. I would hate to think this was the last. I mean, they've carried other supporting characters over from Bond to Bond with just the knowledge, like, okay, this is a new Bond, same character.
Yeah, they've carried Q over before, didn't?
They've carried M over. They've carried Q over. Q's been with 5 different Bonds. Oh, Desmond Llewellyn's been with 5 different Bonds. But I love those characters. Closing the book on it, though, I mean, I don't know. We haven't talked about it yet. But if you're going to close the book on Daniel Craig, the one thing I didn't need to see was the death of James Bond. That's the only, when I talk about how much I love this movie.
Yeah.
And if you're going to close the book on Daniel Craig, fine. And the whole time I was sitting in the theater, my first viewing, and then just soaking in this movie, loving this movie, the whole time I'm like, God, I hope they don't kill him off. This will be up there with Casino Royale, Skyfall, as far as top Daniel Craig. All I ask is just don't kill off James Bond.
Would you have been okay if it was sort of ambiguous, where you wonder, it's not this exact situation the way the movie is, where you go like, oh, was he able to possibly survive what just happened, instead of definitively like, okay, yeah, he's not around anymore?
No, I didn't even. I mean, again, to go back to the novel, You Only Live Twice, when Bond goes to the poison garden on that island, kills Blofeld, it blows up. He's missing and presumed dead. Everybody thinks he died on that island. Yeah. He comes back for the book Man with the Golden Gun. But the whole time, when they reveal the family, I'm like, okay, go with the family at the end of the movie. Because I knew ahead of time that the ending was, all I heard was the ending was divisive with fans. Okay. So I was like, okay, there's a possibility they're killing him off, and just don't do it. They introduced the daughter. I was like, okay, maybe that's it. Maybe the fact that he goes off with the daughter and the mother. Maybe they kill off the daughter. He goes off with the mother. Maybe he goes off the mother. He goes off with the daughter. Just don't, because I'm having too much fun in this movie. Please don't kill him off. And then, of course, at the end, they kill him off. But that's just the one, and especially knowing that, unlike other movies, like when Han Solo dies, when Harrison Ford dies in Force Awakens, that's it. The character's dead. Harrison Ford is Han Solo. You can do prequels, you can do solo Star Wars story, but that character is gone. With Bond, there's somebody coming else. So there's after him, there's some James Bond will return, as we know. Yeah. And it just seemed like, I don't know, it seemed like a cheap ending to the Daniel Craig saga. When I sit down and I take out I'm doing my massive watch through, when I get to the Daniel Craig movies, it's going to be like the Dark Knight trilogy. It's like, okay, well, we're going to see the beginning, the middle, and the end, but it's its own thing.
Right.
And the Daniel Craig James Bond is kind of to use a Marvel, it's kind of a multiverse of James Bonds, and he died in that one.
Right. Well, Sam, same two questions. I want to let you weigh in on MQ, Moneypenny, and Tanner, if you like, just your thoughts on that. But then, we'll talk then after that transition into the death of James Bond.
I mean, I really liked, all three of those characters. And I also want to point out that, for the beginning of Craig's tenure, Judi Dench was M, and that was kind of special.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah.
And that was very special to me because, as a kid who grew up kind of in the Brosnan era, partially, and then, in the Craig era, Judi Dench was my M. So when she died in Skyfall, that was really impactful to, me and my friends who, grew up with her as M. And then I thought that Ray Fiennes and really kind of hit it out of the park, taking over as M and kind of brought back some of that, energy from the Connery era of M. So I really like him, and the Naomi Harris always did a good job as Moneypenny. And then other than the fact that they didn't have him soon enough, I thought that Ben Whishaw was great as Q. So no complaints really there at all. I thought they did a solid job with that. As far as the death goes, I'm kind of with Mark. I really, they really didn't need to kill Bond. Now this has kind of put on the lens. Like, I even watched Casino Royale the other night, and I was like, wow, Casino Royale is a great movie. Too bad this is the Bond that dies at the end of his tenure. So it's kind of, I guess, colored my lens of Craig's era now entirely. But I also feel like even if you had to kill them off, I don't really feel like his death was earned. I feel like they could have given him like more of a noble death, like fighting Blofeld, like Mark mentioned. I feel like it could have been more impactful, kind of like they did with Tony Stark, sacrificing himself at the end of Endgame. I feel like this was more of like okay, well, I can't see my family because I'm infected and I'm too sad, so I'm just going to, let the missiles kill me instead.
Yeah, I think you're right. Sort of a really heroic gesture, to turn towards, Star Trek, even though they undid it. The Spock death scene at the end of Wrath of Khan is so moving because he knowingly, sacrifices himself in that moment. And to have gotten something like that from Bond, as you were speaking, I was already thinking of, Tony Stark knowing that he's not going to be able to survive wielding the Infinity Gauntlet even with the armor on. So yeah, I think that it could have been more special. It didn't bother me per se that they killed him, but the actual execution, pun intended, right, I guess, the actual portrayal of the death, I was like, oh, I kind of wanted something more. I wanted him to have to go back in and, maybe one of those things where, the wire doesn't reach anymore and he has to hold both ends of it, and still be there. Something, one of those deals, something that's a little bit more high tech than that. I think if you were going to sacrifice the character, giving it some more meaning. And then also what I said before, if he and Blofeld just sort of, even if they were standing there and it's the exact same ending they had, if they were standing there together, like, well, I guess this is how it ends for us, there would have been something more fitting to it. But yeah, I do agree overall, Mark, that if you were fairly confident you weren't going to tell any more James Bond stories with the new actor, sure, go ahead and kill him. But I guess because I'm comfortable with living in multiverses and alternate timelines, it's not going to bother me when we get a new Bond, because clearly this Bond is not the Pierce Brosnan Bond. You can make the case that past transitions were in fact the same character, but this one really felt completely different anyway. So maybe that's just what it'll be from here on in, and maybe in 5 more movies, in 15 years, we can expect that Bond to die too. But as we do look to the future, I want to know sort of what your thoughts are. I'll ask you first, Mark. Your thoughts are in terms of what we, how long you think it should be before we get a new Bond film, and if you have any thoughts about who should be Bond.
I mean, I think they should do it sooner rather than later. I mean, we've already waited 5-6 years since the last one. I think they need to go in a more, after coming off of the Craig era, I think they need to go a little more fun, kind of just go back to kind of like GoldenEye was, make Bond fun again. I don't know if that's like MAGA, MBFA, make Bond fun again.
Bafa, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Make
I
Bond
mean,
fun again,
and
yeah.
I want them to go back the next movie. I don't need an origin story. We've already done that.
Sure.
No origin story. Just jump in and have Bond on missions. No personal angst or anything like that. Go a little lighter. Not super. I mean, again, GoldenEye is kind of the perfect example of just kind of make Bond where you just go in and just have fun. There's nobody as far as casting goes. I mean, they traditionally go for unknowns anyway, so I don't know if they're going to go for, I don't know. I keep hearing like Henry Cavill, Tom Hardy. Traditionally, again, they never really go for the big names.
Yeah. No, and my thought on both of them is it's not even so much what kind of portrayal they would give. I feel like both of them, to start a new series of movies with either of them. I mean, maybe they both look older than they are, but I feel like somebody younger, less well known, is fine. And I think it's sort of like what we were saying about Lashana Lynch as the new 007. If you're going to make any decisions based on the race of the actor, I think it should be because somebody read for the part and just blew you away, and you're like, this is what we want. I don't think you should go into it and this is the ethnicity, this is the we need to do a new gender for James Bond. If someone is, you have a story that you want to tell and you go and you see somebody that you think is right for it, I think it's fine. Look, I think that as much as I loved all the talk of Idris Elba possibly being James Bond, he's much too old. He can't start now. If he had been up for it when they cast Daniel Craig, maybe he was much too young, because that's like 15 years ago or more. So I don't know. He just, it didn't come at the right time for him. But I mean, he's so phenomenal as D.I. John Luther on that series that to see him as any spy, if he is going, if they want to have him be a spy character of some kind, I would love to see that movie. He does not have to be James Bond, but something in a James Bond vein, I would love to see that. But I do agree. I think I'm leaning towards, somebody that is either unknown or more like unknown to us here in the U.S. Somebody who's. Go ahead.
If I had to pick an actor that I know,
David Tennant.
No, not David Tennant. No. I would go. Honestly, there's an actor, Aidan Turner. He was in the Hobbit movies. And he's on TV. He's probably more well known as playing a character called Poldark on a British TV series that's been on about 5 or 6 seasons. But and he's younger. He's in his probably by now he's in his mid-30s. But I saw an Agatha Christie movie he did called "And Then There Were None," and he's dressing for dinner. He comes down. He's got short black hair, and he's got the tux, and he's got the cigarette. And after seeing it, I was like, "Damn! If he wouldn't be a good James Bond." And I think, and in fact, you know what? Interesting. Dennis Miller saw him in a play, and I remember him remarking on his show that Aidan Turner would be a good James Bond. And I remember thinking at the time, like,
He
yeah, that's the
he
dude.
was I thought when you said the name, I thought I knew who he was. He was the vampire on the British version of Being Human, right? Or did you see
You
that
know what?
series?
I don't know if he's a vampire. He was on Being Human, so that's
Yeah,
probably who you're
I,
thinking of.
I think I think
Yeah.
that is who I'm thinking of, and I don't want to spend too much time getting there's ways to visually download a photo and be able to zoom in on it in a way that will make it look better. But just for the sake of showing our visual audience what we're talking about, that is him right there. And yeah, I mean, he's definitely got a James Bond kind of vibe there for sure, and that is certainly somebody to be considered. But yeah, I mean, that's a good example of somebody that's not, he's not Superman, he's not Bane / Venom, he's somebody that's not like a household name. And yeah, if somebody's been on television, had smaller roles in movies, I'm fine with that. What are your thoughts, Sam, on the future of the James Bond film franchise?
I'm pretty much with Mark. I think make Bond, fun again. Not necessarily. You don't have to go campy, but just make them, fun movies to just go and see. Kind of popcorn munchers again. The other thing too is, as much as I enjoyed Craig's movies, I feel like the fact they made them all into sequels of each other to where they tied in kind of brought down Craig's series overall. I feel like it was cool to do that for Quantum of Solace just because they had never really had a sequel before, but then to make them all sequels was kind of a thing, that got cumbersome, especially with all the distance between the movies. So I feel like if you're going to have a sequel series, do it like every 2 or 3 years of Bond movies. But don't wait 5 years. I'd like to get Bond sooner rather than later, and
Yeah,
then
no, I agree.
make a little just more fun, kind of like I guess the Mission Impossible movies, or even the Expendables, but with a little higher budget maybe.
Yeah.
And then in terms of I don't really have anyone who I'd like to see as an actor, except like Mark said, maybe an unknown, that Aiden Turner guy. I could see him in the role.
Well, let me throw something in from our friend Lynn B, who has jumped into the live chat. How about Will Sterling? And you tell me if you can think of anybody better who's going to look better in a suit than Will Sterling.
Aiden Turner for one.
All right, but come on, Will Sterling, I think, is clearly the way we all need to go. Ed Bernal has an interesting thought. He's referring to the protagonist in Tenet, John David Washington. He's a tremendous actor. That movie was confusing as all.
I don't know who that is. Who is that?
Did you see Tenet?
No.
It's Denzel's son.
Once I found out it wasn't about David Tennant, I was like, nah.
Yeah, you knew you didn't need to see it. It's Denzel Washington's son. He was also in the Spike Lee movie Black Klansman. He's tremendous, and I hope to see him in big things. They would not cast an American as James Bond. I just can't imagine it.
No,
we can hire Brits as Superman, Spider-Man, Batman. Brits can be anything that are Americans. We'll get a British Captain America one day, I'm sure.
We nearly had an American James Bond twice, though.
Did we really?
Yes. Once George Lazenby left, they cast an American actor called John Gavin.
Okay.
He was all signed up, but then they got Sean Connery back, and they're like, sorry, cut him off. Then for Octopussy, Roger Moore was not going to come back. They cast Josh Brolin's dad, James Brolin. He was signed up. He signed on the contract. He showed up for the first day of filming. They knew Never Say Never Again was coming out with Sean Connery. And they're like, wait a minute. Well, let's go back to Roger and beg him. They begged Roger to come back. Roger said, okay, fine. And if you watch the Octopussy DVD special features, they have an interview with James Brolin. He said the easiest money they made, they paid him the full salary for being James Bond.
Nice.
There's footage of him as James Bond, but they're like, well, we got Roger, let's get him in there. And so we nearly had 2 American James Bonds.
And then one day he showed up on set, and Roger Moore was sitting in his chair.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
Well, you got a big check out of it, though.
Josh Brolin and Eric Stoltz should make a movie where they play James Bond and Marty McFly together. Ed Bernal points out, don't forget Adam West, or so he said. I can't imagine that Adam West was ever actually cast as James Bond. I could see him playing Roger Moore in a movie about Roger Moore, but I can't see Adam West actually playing James Bond.
Point of trivia for James Bond fans: the first actor who ever portrayed James Bond on screen in the 1950s TV adaptation of Casino Royale was an American actor named Barry Nelson. That is the first James Bond on record. Sean Connery was not the first James Bond. Barry Nelson in the TV production of Casino Royale as an American James Bond, which is the reason why they didn't have the rights to it till 2005, 2006. When they could reacquire the rights from whoever owned it at the time.
Oh, I see.
But if you go back, it's on YouTube. Look up Casino Royale, Barry Nelson, whatever. Peter Lorre plays Le Chiffre, the Mads Mikkelsen character.
Is
1 hour TV.
So that was for television, but it's one of those things that exists and you can actually watch. It's not like one of those
on YouTube.
One of those TV shows that's like lost in antiquity because they recorded over it,
like
many episodes of Doctor
YouTube.
Who. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time to chat about Bond. And Sam, I want you to tell people where they can find you and where they can find your show, including the episode where you and Mark talk about this very same movie.
Well, if you'd like a more extended podcast, where I think Mark and I spent about 3 hours talking Bond with my friend Sean, who was also a big Bond fan, and you can find that on my YouTube, either on my YouTube page, which is youtube.com/Whitfield Report, or if you want to go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can search the Whitfield Report there, and for all my podcasts and everything else. And thanks for having me on. So.
Yeah, I always like to look at my podcast as the Monarch notes to Sam's podcast. His 3-hour version. This is the shortened version. We're not even the Cliff Notes. We're not classy enough. We're the Monarch notes. Yeah, Sam, of course, it's great to chat with both of you. And Mark, where can people find you and some of your Simeon-related podcast work?
Hold on, let me move the camera over here. You'll see the Planet of the Apes right here.
Beautiful.
Yeah, Podcast of the Apes. By the way, the 3-hour Whitfield Report is only part 2. I think there's a 90-minute part 1. So yes. I think altogether, Sam, we did about 4.5 hours. So
wow, you guys are making me look bad. That I need a nap after an hour and 12 minutes.
That was a lot of Bond, but I'm still doing the Podcast of the Apes, Planet of the Apes fan podcast. I'm me and my co-hosts are trying to get back together again. I've mostly been going solo doing during COVID. I've been doing the coffee and quarantine commentaries of the 1974 TV series,
which is very entertaining.
Thank you, Sam.
And I'm not even that big of a Planet of the Apes fan.
Oh, thank you. So I've been kind of doing those, but the three of us are going to kind of get back together and get back rolling. Maybe pop on YouTube, but I'm on Facebook. I'm not really on Twitter all that much, but I'm out there.
But if they want to tweet at you, it's Mark Coyne, Coyne Hunt, and that's where they can.
Well, it's Mark Coyne. I think it is Mark Coyne.
I think it is. Yeah, I'm almost.
I have so many different IDs, but
it's hard to it's hard to keep track of all of it, and that's the thing. You're never going to hack into Mark's accounts because his passwords are all just as complicated. So, but as for me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. Follow at Bladtcast on Twitter, like the Bladtcast on Facebook. And of course, Bladtcast.com. It's always spelled Bladtcast. We have many more movies to talk about in the weeks ahead. We will still, even though it's been out for a few weeks now, we're still going to talk about Venom 2. There will be carnage. Let there be carnage. I always get confused as to what the actual title is, but that's all right. The one with carnage. That's actually the Friends episode where Woody Harrelson plays Carnage. The one with carnage. It's bad things happen to Marcel the monkey. I'll just spoil that for all of you. And just some other movies that I've seen that just I can't shake my head hard enough about. Many Saints of Newark or Halloween Kills. And Dune is coming. From the time we're recording, it's a few days away. And I don't know what to think. I've heard from people who have liked it, that have seen it. I've heard from people who are just make the point that I can't say what I think. So because of the embargo. So I wonder what their thoughts are. I look forward to hearing all of it. And, we've got a big Marvel movie, Eternals, coming up. So I love that we've got movies. We've got lots of movies to talk about and many more in the weeks ahead. And speaking of Will Sterling, our pal Will and I, we haven't even talked about the fact that we drove about 3 hours from Los Angeles to go see Kiss down in Chula Vista, south of San Diego. So we got a lot to talk about. But that is not this time on the Bladtcast. We'll start all of that next time on the Bladtcast.